Lilith returns to the Garden of Eden and notices Adam has now a companion. Adam walks by and is not even aware that Lilith is perching on top of the enclosement wall, as the garden was enclosed and had gates. So Lilith is on top of the wall and she's looking in. She sees Adam that has an expression on his face that she describes as that of a man being completed by having a companion. Behind him is this woman, Eve, where Lilith describes her as having this innocence about her and her being voluptuous. And she kind of throws some shade, saying that it could be misinterpreted for beauty. So it's kind of like saying she wasn't that gorgeous. Adam doesn't even realize that Lilith is there and is observing him, while Eve looks straight up at her. But Lilith gives her a sign to stay in silence. And the girl nodded and goes on. Lilith makes a point of telling how she did not go to see what they did that night, meaning she wasn't going to stalk them and look at what they're doing. She stayed on the wall. The next day, Eve goes to the river Pashan and has her feet in the water. While Eve is on the shore and has her feet in the water and is enjoying the day, with just taking in the sun, playing with her hair, that is when Lilith, with no intent of disturbing her, decides to go sit next to her and puts her feet in the water also. Eve still has her eyes closed. Now at this time in the garden, all animals could speak. They had this one language that they all understood. Then Lilith asks Eve, "Are you separate? Are you separate from Adam?" Eve lazily turned and said, "Separate from what?" And Lilith explained, "Are you separate from Adam? Or are you part of Adam?" And then Eve says, "Oh, you don't know the story?" And she starts telling her how poor Adam was all alone in the garden, naming all the trees, plants, flowers, and animals. And he noticed how all the animals had a companion. Except him. Adam felt incomplete without a partner. He felt that he was missing something. So he went to the Creator and asked him for a companion. That night, a deep sleep fell upon Adam, and the Creator took his rib and created Eve. And she says, "and created me." Then Adam saw me at the first lights of dawn when he awoke. Now here you have Lilith that's like, how can I respond? I had been erased. Lilith had been erased. In her mind, she's like, oh, so now this is how the story goes. He was naming, he was lonely, she was made for him. No Lilith, no creatrix, no dilemma, no problem, and most of all, no struggle for dominance. Lilith then asks her name, and Eve says, "I am woman, because I was created from the womb of man." Everyone knows. Now Eve was puzzled enough that she decided to open up her eyes and look at Lilith, because remember, during all of this conversation, she was enjoying the sunlight and had her eyes closed. And technically, she could have thought that she was talking or speaking with one of the animals, because at the time in the Garden of Eden, all the animals were articulate. Man and animal could communicate. So now Eve is intrigued by these questions, opens her eyes, and notices Lilith. And Eve says, "You are like me," and is totally surprised. And Lilith says, "From my throat I pulled a sound that was part agreement, part laughter, and part assertion of my complete indifference." Eve then asks her, "Are you like me? Do you also come from him?" And Lilith says, "Oh no, I am not from him. I was created on my own." I was created by El Shaddai, the creatrix. And this is the first time that she gives a name to the creatrix. She goes on to say, she gave birth to me in the manner that women give birth. Then Lilith stares off into the distance and says, you too will give birth. And Eve innocently responds, well, if I'm to make something, no one has told me about it. I just live in this garden. And I can also eat all of the fruits, except from the 2 trees that grow alongside each other. Those trees grow like companions, and if I touch them, I will die. And Lilith thinks to herself, I had never been denied these fruits. My brief stay in Eden had been free of denial. And I wondered why these fruits were forbidden to her. Eve looked at Lilith from head to toe and asked, where do you come